Good morning everyone, today we're talking about the A7R3, 3 months later, real life review. How does it feel? Welcome back. In case you're wondering, today we're on Nusa Penida to the west of Bali in Indonesia, and look at that absolutely insane landscape. The goal, while we're doing that review of the A7R3 that I've had for 3 months, and we're gonna talk also about the A7III because there's a lot to be said about those two cameras. Well, our goal is going to be going down to that beach before the sun goes down. In case you're wondering, my name is Pierre. I'm a travel and adventure photographer. I'm on a world tour with my wife Trina, that's behind me right now, and we are doing 12 countries in 12 months, and this is my main camera, the Sony A7R3. I've had time to test it in many different conditions, even hiking down mountains like I'm doing right now. I don't know if you guys can see, but this is pretty crazy. So there are a few points I think that are super important to address when you're looking for a new camera, and those 3 points are going to be basically ergonomics, photo modes and video modes, because video and photo are both very important to me. So in terms of ergonomics, I have to say it, I am highly impressed by this camera. Coming from Nikon and Panasonic, and even before that Canon, I have pretty high expectations in terms of ergonomics. If I had to rank them, Nikon was number 1, Panasonic number 2, and Canon number 3. I didn't like Canon as much. I felt that they were missing a few buttons, but now Sony, at first, the first time I got an A7 in my hands, I really didn't like the lack of buttons, the difficulty to move the focus point around when you're doing photo. It's super important. But now actually they changed a lot on the design, and this is incredible. I really love that camera. Reminds me of my Nikon D750 with 2 wheels at the front and at the back. Also, the crucial element, they moved the movie button, which makes it easier to press and way easier to access. That changes absolutely everything. Another thing that is really good is actually you can customize all the buttons on the camera, which is just super important. So meaning you can reprogram the whole camera to just have it to your taste. So if you don't like the initial setup, totally change it. That makes it super easy. If you want, I can share with you my programs or the way I programmed it, because I really liked it. I find it really easy coming from Nikon to actually transition to it. So that's something, it took me a while to get used to it and like just get around all the customization options. But once you have it, it's a huge time saver. While we're at it on the customization, there is something to know, is that the previous version, it was very difficult to customize your menus also, but it is finally possible. Look at that beach behind. It's finally possible. You have like 4 pages of menu or even more that you can customize. I created my own like quick access modes, and that is very good time saver when you're shooting all the time with it. How are you doing, guys? Fine? Yeah. Ooh, it's getting steep. Crazy. Another point on the ergonomics is the screen. So the screen is articulated, and it has a really high definition, which means the picture you're watching at the back of the camera have very high definition. It's very practical to see how your shots are exposed, if they're good, if they're not. And the viewfinder, in my opinion, is one of the best I've ever had. It's been very difficult to move from a normal DSLR to a mirrorless because of those viewfinders having a bit of lag compared to a normal camera, but I'm so impressed. This is so fast. This camera is so fast. There's literally no lag when you're taking pictures, when you're taking a Rafale. It is very convenient, even if you're shooting action and sport, which I think is very important for every type of photography. Okay, I don't know what's going on, but it looks like it's more than vertical. It's like negative vertical. It's kind of scary, I have to say. I have a fear of the height, and this is not helping at all. Getting closer to the beach, the other last great thing I love about the ergonomics is like I can literally hold the camera in one hand with the lens on it and other gear, and just let go of my thumb, and it does not fall down, which is absolutely essential. So Sony, you did an amazing job at the ergonomics on that camera. Thumbs up. Maybe for the mode wheel I would have preferred the lock. You can actually click and it totally releases it, so I don't have to repress on it every time I want to change mode. All right, the next part is photography, but I'm gonna talk to you in a second when I'm down there, because I'm afraid either I'm gonna fall or I'm gonna drop the camera all the way down. Oops. So let's meet down here. Finally made it down to that insane beach. It is just, if any of you have ever been to France, to Étretat, the cliffs, this is just as insane. Look at that panorama. Wow. So in terms of photography, the big highlight for that Sony A7R3 is actually the 42 megapixels sensor, also combined with the latest technology in terms of autofocus and tracking. And I have to say, my Nikon D750 was already incredible, but this is a whole new different level. Guys, I really need to sweat that off. Just gonna go in the water quickly and come back. Amazing, absolutely incredible. Super important for me as a travel photographer who does a lot of portraits and lifestyle stuff is actually the speed at which it can shoot. But I'm not talking about just like how many frames per second, it's just usage. Like, can you take a lot of shots, can you take a good rafale and then shoot again just behind it, or flip it straight into video mode? What I've noticed with that camera is that you can actually do it as long as your memory card is fast enough, because those 42 megapixel like raw files are like killers for slow memory cards. So the buffer takes time if your memory card is slow. If it's fast, it is absolutely amazing. No problem at all, even shooting a lot of frames. Now that you can shoot super fast, another crucial element is actually your autofocus. Let me tell you, the autofocus is amazing. It is just wonderful. It's always on point. Now I have two lenses that I use on that camera. It's the 1635 f2.8, link in description, and the 7200 2.8. Those two lenses are very fast by themselves, but the camera, the autofocus, continuous autofocus is so good that I can actually use that even for portraits, which is something with the Nikon I would have never done in the past. Like when I was doing portraits, lifestyle, couples, I would never use autofocus in continuous, simply because it was a bit too slow. It would miss the shot by a little bit, but this one is insane. It's definitely the best autofocus I've had in my life. Now I've read that the A7 III actually has the same autofocus system as the A9, which is even better. So I'm thinking the A7 III might be even better than the A7R3 for like super fast continuous tracking and stuff. As you can see in the background, we are having sunset right now. I need to go all the way back up. I'm gonna put you here and I'm gonna talk about my favorite thing just at the top. Give me a sec. My favorite feature is actually the face detection. So face detection recognizes the eyes of people and basically locks the focus on that. Now, if you couple that with the autofocus in continuous mode, it is absolutely insane. Meaning, it's gonna track the eyes of that person no matter what you're doing. The AFC being super fast and the face detection being super precise. I would say I get like 85% of the shots, even in continuous mode, like right on the eyes, which in my opinion is really good, because in the past I would use single point focus, put it on the eye, but sometimes you would miss the eye by a little bit, and when the subject is moving it's even more difficult. In terms of photography, another point that is hugely important, and it's a game changer compared to normal DSLRs, and it's an in-body stabilization. Now Sony had it on the previous versions, and now it's just keeps getting better and better. My Panasonic GH5 had in-body stabilization. It was insanely good. On this one it's a full frame, so it's more difficult to stabilize fully, but let me tell you, I can shoot handheld, waterfalls, or like anything you want at 1/5 of a second and even a little bit lower, and the shots are still sharp. To me, that's why it's a game changer, because I don't need to be carrying my huge tripod all the time with me. Look at the size of my backpack already. If I have to put the tripod on top of that, it's just like super heavy all the time. And now I just don't have to think about it that much. I know I can drag the shutter to 1/5 or even lower, and the shots are gonna be sharp. So that wraps up the photography segment. I'm gonna talk about the video, because this is something I do a lot. I do videos absolutely every day on this world tour. So if you want to check the travel channel, it's linked below also. But I just wanted to mention we did move location because it got too dark last night. I couldn't finish that video, and today we're gonna go shoot some underwater photography and video over there. I want to try a GoPro Dome, and also I have a case for that camera, so it's pretty sick to go shoot some turtles and some sharks that are hanging out there. All right, before moving on to the video segment, I just want to say, remember, everything I'm talking about right here is my personal opinion. This is what I've experienced by using this camera for the past 3 months in those conditions in travel environment. So if you feel that you don't agree with certain points, just let me know in the comments. I'll be more than happy to open the discussion on that. Also, I'll be talking about the A7 III just at the end of the videos. I'm gonna mention the biggest difference between the A7R3 and the A7 III and what I think about it. Alright, so in terms of video, the specs are very standard, I would say, for 2018. We're talking about 4K at 30 frames per second. If I'm very honest, 60 frames per second would have been amazing, like on the GH5, but 30 frames per second is really good already, 24 if you want. 1080 slow motion, 120 frames per second, nothing really changed on that. What I really appreciate with the slow motion is that the autofocus is actually working when you're shooting slow motion. So you also have a mode that's called SNQ. SNQ allows you to shoot slow motion and output it directly in 24 frames per second or 30 frames per second, so you don't have to slow the footage down afterwards in editing, but you're not gonna be recording sound, so that's something to remember. I prefer to shoot straight into 120p with the sound, and then I just slow it down 50% or 20% depending on the need and depending on the footage. So that's really up to you. This is how I do it. Now, with the type of videos I shoot, I have a lot of talking heads, and I also have, how do you call that, a few cinematics. Something that I noticed is that compared to the GH5, the stabilization is a little less good, meaning with the GH5 it almost felt like I had a gimbal. Now I really have to pay attention when I'm walking around with a camera. That being said, the lens I'm using, mainly the 16-35 2.8, is not stabilized, so if you're using a stabilized lens plus the in-body stabilization, that's actually better. If you can do that, do that. But if you like that lens like I do, well, just watch out when you're walking around. You might have seen it, it's slightly shaky sometimes. If you love color grading, you love bloods, etc., Sony allows you to set up different color profiles, and they're actually picture profiles, sorry, they're actually very good. You have, like, I think 10 different modes, and you can set them up the way you want it. It took me a long time to figure out what I want, and lately I've just been using no color, no picture profile, because it was faster for me to edit the short travel videos. If I'm doing something super cinematic, I'm gonna use a super flat color profile. I think it's PP6. That is pretty easy to grade. I don't know what's going on. There is some kind of James Bond type coconut shoot in the background going on. It's pretty fun. Moving on to the audio. The audio, I talked a bit about it in my video about the problem with that camera. It still hasn't been fixed so far. On my camera, I have to return it. So the problem is that the microphone jack in is actually a bit wobbly, and what happens is that it stops recording the audio channel 1, which is slightly annoying. All my footage, even the one you're hearing now, has to be turned into dual mono, and I have to cut one of the channel. It's a bit annoying because it kind of defeats the purpose of having that nice microphone on. Another point that's super duper important for me, and it is autofocus. Autofocus is the most important part when I'm shooting videos, because I'm doing run and gun stuff. I really need to be fast from the coconut back to my face and such. This camera totally blew my mind away. I came from the Nikon D750 that had great autofocus for photography, but for video, it was terrible. It was like hunting all the time. And then, in terms of video, I did the Panasonic GH5. Had good face detection, and the autofocus wasn't as bad as people say, but now that I have that camera, I totally understand it was very, very slow. This is lightning fast. This A7R3 is so fast, it's not even funny. I don't even have to think about it. It's amazing. Combine that with the face detection, you have no problem making sure you're always in focus, no matter what kind of ethnicity the person is. The face detection always works, which is something that doesn't always happen with all the cameras, just FYI. Now that's gonna wrap it up in terms of video. I think the real question now, because the A7 III just came out, is should you get the A7R3 or the A7 III? to cut the discussion short, I think it all comes down, do you need 42 megapixels or not? If you don't need the 42 megapixel, I would recommend you getting the A7 III. It has the same specs, it even has the, how do you call that, the AI of the A9 in terms of autofocus, which is insane. And I don't know why they didn't put that in the A7R3, go figure, but it's in the A7 III, which also means you have 93% of the area that is covered by phase detection for autofocus, whereas the A7R3 only has 68% covered. Still amazing, still great camera in my opinion, but if you want to save $1,200, maybe go for the A7 III. But if you really need the 42 megapixel and want to know that you're gonna have amazing videos too, this is definitely a beast. This camera is totally a beast. The few downsides that I found to that camera are listed in a different video, so if you want to check all the problems I have with that camera, check out that video. This video is mainly to share my experience, and as I mentioned quickly in the other one, I really love that camera. So far I've been really surprised. Now there are a few things I wish could be a bit better. I mentioned it in the other video, and one I did not mention was the weather sealing. I think it's a bit fair. I think it could be a bit better. So Sony, if you're hearing me out, just add maybe a little more protection on your lenses so that when they're screwed onto the body, there is never ever one drop of water that can ingress. Because I felt that, yeah, I've had the bad surprise of seeing a drop of water on the metal ring one day when there had been a little splash, and no damage, but that's something always to be careful for. So we could conclude that this camera is an absolute game changer in its category in my opinion. The stabilization, the autofocus, the amazing sensor, the dynamic range, which is insane. I barely talk about it, but it is 15 stops of dynamic range are just magical. And it's a camera I would recommend to anyone needing like high quality pictures, like with high definitions. And if you don't need the 42 megapixel, highly recommend you to take a look at the A7 III. I think it's an all-round camera that is absolutely amazing. So if you want to see any of the shots that I mentioned, go to Instagram, it's @PierreTLambert. You'll see the last shots are all taken with the A7R3. And now let me ask you, I'm super curious, which camera would you get? Would you get the A7R3 or would you get the A7 III? That's a question that a lot of people have asked me which one they should get. I want to hear about you, which one you're gonna get. Are you gonna get any of those, or are you gonna skip it completely? Now remember guys, this is a photography channel, so there are a few tutorials around here. Make sure you go check it out. They're all shot in beautiful settings like that. So I hope you will enjoy that type of videos. I know it's a bit moving, but it's something different. I'm trying something new here. So let me know if you like it. And if you do, leave me a big thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to see the next one. And I will see you in the next episode, guys. Have an amazing day. Bye.